Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dismantling Injustice podcast, powered by Brooklyn Community Bail Fund, or BCBF. For folks that don't know us, at BCBF, we work with allies to free people from incarceration, whether that's prison, jail, immigration detention, or surveillance. And on this podcast, we offer analysis on issues affecting folks who encounter the criminal, legal, and immigration systems. As always, you can learn more about our work by visiting us at brooklynbailfund.org. I'm Carl, BCBF's Director of Advocacy and Policy, and I'm here with my co-pilot, Saleh Israel, the producer and creator of this podcast, and BCBF's Director of Special Initiatives. This is a short episode that we wanted to record because last week, that's the week of President's Day, Biden's immigration proposal was introduced by New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez as the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021. On the very same day, the acting DHS secretary sent a memo to ICE giving them guidance on how to enforce Biden's deportation priorities. This didn't get much coverage at all, but it's equally important. So we thought we should give our listeners a quick rundown with a flash of our analysis because there's a lot of misinformation and confusion out there. But first thing, I'm sure many of our listeners heard that Joe Biden put in place a moratorium, or more accurately, a pause on deportations his first week in office. This moratorium is no longer in place. A federal court in Texas placed a hold on implementation of this order because a few states, notably the state of Texas, asserted that the order infringed on their financial interest in immigrant detention and deportations. So basically, they had money to make off of caging people. Their interest arises out of a contract signed between those states and ICE during the Trump administration. Anyway, the gist of it is that they sued the White House, and now the moratorium has been halted. As a result, hundreds, maybe even thousands at this point, of immigrants have already been deported in the first few weeks of the new administration. So now, moving to Biden's immigration bill and the immigration enforcement priorities, I like to think of it this way. The immigration bill tells us who the White House believes should be able to stay in the U.S. and how the White House plans to help them stay. The memo sent to ICE, the enforcement priorities, tells us whom the White House believes should be deported, or the categories of people who ICE should prioritize for deportation, and how ICE intends to go about determining if someone falls within these categories. Now let's start with the bill. Again, the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021. Under the bill, undocumented folks can apply for temporary legal status immediately, and they have the ability to apply for green cards, that's lawful permanent resident status, after 5 years if they pass criminal and national security background checks and pay their taxes. You know, Uncle Sam's always going to collect his money before giving you anything. Beneficiaries of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program of the Temporary Protected Status program, TPS, and immigrant farm laborers who meet certain requirements can apply for green cards right away. And after 3 years, they can become citizens if they also pass background checks, pay their taxes, and pass the citizenship exam. Another thing the bill does, it removes the word alien from our immigration laws and replaces it with non-citizen, which of course is about time, especially now that we're going to Mars and there might be actual, people that are not from this earth walking amongst us. It's great if we start, calling people as they are. The bill adds, quote unquote, permanent partnership as a family-based visa category. And this is particularly relevant for LGBTQ families, but also others. Biden's immigration proposal also includes what's called the No Ban Act, and that prohibits discrimination based on religion, and it limits presidential authority to issue future bans. So it basically makes it harder to implement, say, a Muslim ban in the future. Biden's proposal provides federal funding for organizations to expand what's called immigrant integration programs. These are like job readiness programs, housing assistance programs that help folks adjust to living in the U.S. The bill provides funding to expedite screening of asylum seekers at the border, which we've discussed in our last podcast. There are literally thousands of folks at the border seeking asylum right now. And it also implements technology and infrastructure to quote unquote secure the border. And i.e., I read this as it implements surveillance tools at the border. The bill, it aims to improve immigration courts and protect vulnerable individuals by expanding case management programs, reducing court backlogs, expanding training for immigration judges, and improving technology in immigration courts. The bill gives judges discretion to review cases and grant relief to quote-unquote deserving individuals. And then lastly, it increases the number of diversity and family-based visas, which would basically enable more people to arrive in the U.S. with documentation. In sum, there are some good things in this bill. There are a few areas for concern, notably the increased funding for surveillance, especially since the White House has indicated they're not funding, they would no longer fund the border wall, but they are funding a security apparatus at the border in the form of surveillance and technology. And also concerning is the fact that people with criminal convictions continue to be excluded from immigration relief, which we're going to talk more about in a few minutes. So that's the bill. Now for the memo outlining Biden's immigration enforcement priorities. Again, Biden's acting Department of Homeland Security Secretary has instructed ICE to prioritize for deportation 3 groups of people. 1, folks deemed national security threats. 2, people that are border enforcement and removal priorities. And 3, people that they deem public safety threats. And so we're going to take those in turn. 1, so who is a national security threat? These are people that ICE believes have either engaged in terrorism or terrorism-related activities, have engaged in or suspected of engaging in espionage or espionage-related activities, or someone whose arrest is necessary to protect the national security of the U.S. And this last provision is sort of a catch-all. So those are national security threats. The second group, border security priorities. This group is anyone that was arrested at the border or any port of entry into the U.S. And ports of entry can mean sea, they can be air or airports more accurately, any port of entry into the U.S. while attempting to come into the country on or after November 1st, 2020, or anyone who is not physically present in the U.S. before November 1st, 2020. So basically, November 1st, 2020 is the cutoff date for anyone that would benefit from Biden's immigration agenda. If you were not present in the U.S. before that date, you were a priority for deportation. And then lastly, who's deemed a public safety priority? These are anyone convicted of an aggravated felony under federal immigration law. And this is very important. Aggravated felony under immigration law is very different than what we think of when we think of a felony under criminal law. And in many ways, it's a lot more expansive, which we will, get into hopefully in future podcasts when we get into the nitty gritty of immigration law. But you should just know this is not the same as the felony that you think of, when you think of criminal law. And then the second group deemed public safety threats are anyone that's been convicted of an offense of which an element of that offense is participation in a street gang. And it leaves some qualifiers for folks under age 16. So anyone convicted of an offense that, basically involves participation in a gang. So again, this is the breakdown of Biden's immigration agenda, his policy proposal, what he wants to do to help immigrants, and what the White House intends to do to enforce immigration law, to detain and deport immigrants. We at BCBF have a lot of thoughts on this, but in sum, this is eerily similar to Obama's immigration agenda. And I use the word eerily because that's not a good thing. The last time the Democrats were in the White House, we got DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, and they also tried to implement another program that would benefit parents of childhood arrivals. But we also got a record 5 million deportations. And I don't see how this plan gives us a different outcome because it, again, while it helps some immigrants, it also criminalizes millions of immigrants. Again, hopefully we are going to be able to get into this more in future podcasts. We're going to be talking more in depth about this agenda with some of our partners in upcoming episodes. Until then, stay tuned. I hope this was helpful. And thanks again. To learn more about BCBF, you can visit us online at brooklynbailfund.org. And as always, you can follow us or DM us on Twitter at BK Bail Fund or Instagram at Brooklyn Bail Fund. Until next time and until we're free, peace out.